This stuff here, Yerushalmi Yoma, the article edition, we're on the top of Chafim Ralph, Mamash at the top, with this header from the Mishnah, which is Heleni Imo, Heleni the mother Mumbaz, which in the Vilna, it's about 15 lines to the bottom. It's the two dots before and after this header, so it's kind of easy to find. But it's a line, and if you look in the right-hand margin, it says Midos Perek Daled Mishnah Zayin, a line below that in the Gemara, you'll find it. Okay, Helenium also Nivreshes Shazal Piso Shayachel. She made a Nivreshes, the chandelier of gold, on the opening of the Hechel. So Trainam right had a Machlekes, we don't know who they are. Chadamar Menarta, one said it's Menarta, which is a candelabrum. Chadamar Kunbisa, a kind of lamp, which is, according to Korban Reb Chaim, is a glass enclosed lamp. Now, as we'll see momentarily, it doesn't necessarily, even if it's a candelabrum, it doesn't necessarily mean it was served for candles. We'll see in a second. Tirgum Achilles, Unklus translates, Achilles is Unklus, and my cousin Yerushalmi notes that it's a pell and nobody recites this, that here we see that Unklus wrote a Targum, at least in parts of the Ksuvim, and Daniel. At least in the Aramaic parts of Daniel, he wrote an Aramaic Targum. The Kaval Nivrashta, opposite the Nivrashta, which is the handwriting on the wall, time Belshazzar was written opposite the Nivrashta, which was on the wall, the Kabbal Lamafras. So Moshe says the Mafras is the same word as lampa. I'm not sure about that. But in any event, they obviously what a Mafras was, and Kabbal Lampras, whatever it is, and that was evidence for one of these two positions. Again, according to Moshe, it is evidence of convisa because this means Lampras and Lampa are the same thing. She also wrote a gold tablet of which the Parsha Soi was written. Now, the next line, the question where it's going on. Is it going this tablet Shazov or not? Because according to Moshe the Mishnah, the next line is going back on the candelabrum. It's the time when the sun would shine. So sparks would radiate out from this candelabrum, which I guess is highly reflective. And Yudim Shazarchel Chama, they knew that Zarchel Chama. So according to him, that the head in the middle is out of place. We're going back to the Mishnah, and this was explaining this Nivreshes. Okay? And then we're going to want to talk about the Tavla in a minute. But according to Pashup Shot, it could be that this is good, that we had Machlekes by the Nivreshes, if it's a menorah or a lampa. Then that was for candles. And now this gold tablet, which had the Parsha Saita, was so brilliant that sparks of gold would come out of it. At the time when the sun rose. Now, Korban says it's going back. These lines are going back on the Nivreshes of the Mishnah, and of course, going to Moshe Mishnah, that also was the case. All right, but the next line is for sure going on the Tavla. Maya Kosovo, what was written on the Tavla? Rishim Logashim Rabbi said, Ala Beza Kosovo. It was written in Ala Bez, meaning Rashi Tevos, not the words itself, because as Korban says, we don't write the Torah Megillah. So therefore, they wrote in Rashi Tevos in abbreviated form. Vatani Kiksav Shakan, Kain Kosovo Shakan. So as says Moshe, there's a bright side effect. It's not called Parsha Kula, and the assumption is that means the entire Parsha was written out. It says Gemara, and it goes on. Lo muveh v'lo mudak. It wasn't too thick and not too thin, which according to Moshe, I'm not sure really understand that. I think according to Korban makes more sense. He goes back and he says that Kiksav Shekan al Tavla Kain Kotzab Megillah Shel Soita. So as you wrote it on the tablet, you wrote it on the Megillah. It's really have to write the whole thing out. And it goes on to say, then the next line I want to make sense. Lo muvev v'chuli aksav shemir lo av lo dak, meaning Korban, was not thicker nor thinner. Me'aksav shegabei tavla el benoni. They were was not too thick, not too thin, but average. And I guess that wanted to make a proper proportion of the ink to the paper when you erase it. I'm not sure exactly what the formula was, but somehow they were precise in that. So it sounds like it must have been written out on the tavla because it exactly was the tavla in the Megillah. So Gemara says, so it's no. The way the Aleph was written in the tavla is the way they wrote the Aleph in the Megillah. Beis Shakan came Beis Shakan. The way they wrote the Beis in the tavla is the way the Beis was in the Megillah. But it wasn't. But Taka was Rosh Tevis on the tavla and on the Megillah, where it's a special mitzvah to write it down. So that was they used the same font, but they wrote it all out. Whereas in the tavla, it was written Rosh Tevis. Tiny Rabbi Yoshua said, "Kol parsha soita kosav aleh." He says that the entire parsha soita was written on it. Shemimene akorim b'targin kol tikdukei parsha. They would read from this tavla. They would read and explicate all the things that to explain to the woman all the precise nuances of the parsha. Okay, so we know it's clearly it was not Rosh Hashanah, so it was all written out. Nikanor nasu nisim l'del soisam. Sorry, umaskino sol l'shvach. So Nikanor, there were miracles, and they meant all these people mentioned Mishnah with a shvach. And now we read a story. Tiny Meiser show you boy Besina. There was a Meiser. They come with the doors in a boat. Vanalem Sargo the Shabbayam, and a great storm came upon him. See, not Luchamem, and they took one of the doors. Victilu Bayam, and they tossed into the sea. Bixu had to Shani. And he wanted to also toss the second door into the sea. Obviously, very heavy copper doors to save the boat. Vlamai Begifar, and he kind of got up and hugged it. He said, if you're going to toss that door into the sea, to toss me with the sea, into the sea with it. He was crying and mourning at the loss of the door of God continuously until they got to the marina, the port in Yaffo. It became once they got to the port, the door she threw over started bubbling out from underneath the boat. Okay, so this is Kai de Tanina Taman, and this is our Mishnah talks about the doors in Yikana and its Nisim. It's like that which we look over there. Kol Shem Shayu and Midos, Kol Sharim Shayu Bavasham, all the dates in Beis Hamikdash, Shtainu Shavuot will eventually change when they got richer to be of gold. Chutzu Shari Nikanor, except for the gates of Nikanor. Nation Nasi Boim Nace, because the miracle befell them. Yeshua, some say nation Chushtam Matzi, because their copper was yellow like gold. Tan Shabelezer, the Chushtam Matzi, not only was their copper yellow like gold, but Yosef Yafin shows up, it was more beautiful than gold. Okay, Alochates, and we had this whole Mishnah and Sugya basically back in Masechah Shkoli. Ve'elu Lignai, these are the ones who they mention in a negative way, in a derogatory way. Beis Garmu Loretzu Lamed El Maislech Purim. I just noticed that my main mic was not plugged in, so I'm sorry if it was a little bit background noise in the beginning of the recording, but now I noticed and I plugged it in. Ve'el Ganai, and these are for the mentioned derogatory way. Beis Karmu Lo Tzah Mei Lechem Ma'aseh Lechem Purim. They didn't want to teach how to do Lechem HaPanim. Beis Avtius Lo Tzah Mei Ma'aseh Lechem. They didn't want to teach how to do the Ketores. Hugas ben Levi had Perek Bashir. He knew that he was excellent at his singing. Really, he knew a chapter, but it means that he was very adept and very expert at singing. And the Lord Tzah Lamed didn't want to teach. Ben Kam to Lord Tzah Lamed Amai Sextav, he used to be able to write the shame of 4 letters with his 4 fingers simultaneously, and not want to teach that. I was showing them on the first ones. It says the previous Mishnah, Heleni, Mombas, and all those. Nikanor. Zecher Tzadik Yivrocha, the memory of a Tzadik is for blessing. El Nemar, and these it said B'Shem Shem Yerkav, the name of the wicked is Rat. Okay, so again, as I said, we had all this in the Shkolim. Beis Gamu became a Ma'aseh Lechem HaPanim. The Beis Garmu were experts at making Lechem HaPanim. Udioso, and in removing from the oven. The Lord Tzulam, they didn't want to teach. So they brought experts from Alexandria, expert bakers. They became Ma'aseh Chaponim. They knew how to make lechem baponim properly. But how to remove it properly from the oven loy became. And they were not able to do it properly. And the reason was based on the they made the fire from the inside, and somehow the bread was on the outside of the oven, or somehow they did the redia from outside the oven in a way. As a result, it would not go bad. Obviously, there was a nace, but we don't know when Somech on the nace, and perhaps even the nace didn't occur when they didn't make it. Not clear. But in any event, so these other experts, they from Alexandria, they made the fire inside the oven, and also they were removing the bread from inside the oven. They made the pitot inside. Reb Chaim brings down the gears of the Gra in Shkolim, that the base of Tinas were mesikim b'chutz. They were mesikim mivnim. They made the fire inside, vov and baked on the inside, and that would not go bad. And the other ones from Alexandria are you mesikim mibachutz, vov machutz, and they would make both on the outside. And the reason why they would do that is because they're afraid to bake on the inside, that it shouldn't break when it was removed from the oven, and therefore it went bad. But okay, so whatever the process was, we don't really understand it, but somehow, whatever gets you learn, the people from Beis Abtinas got right, people from Alexandria got it wrong. But it's going to be some passions, and we'll go back. Became aware of the matter. They said, and then Kodesh Baruch created for his honor, and therefore we have to go back to what's most best for the purpose of Beis Hamikdash, and we have to bring back the Beis Hamikdash. They sent for Beis Hamikdash. They didn't want to come until they doubled their salary. Money they used to take 12. They raised it to 24. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, it seemed Armin of the original 24, but Nassim Arba showed they took 48. They said to me, why don't you want to teach us how to do this properly? They said, we have a tradition from our forefathers. Shabbai says that, see the chayv of this house eventually is going to be destroyed. We don't want other people to learn. The Yosin can will do this. You also can maybe, but no, same idea. They shouldn't do this. Lifnei avodah zarah, and before the avodah zarah. Before in this way, they mentioned them in a positive way, that there was a positive aspect about them. None of their children ever went out with fine bread. They shouldn't say that they were taking bread from the lechem haponim and giving it to their children. Beis Haftinas became by sectores. They were experts in sectores. U'malei Oshan, and how to put the malei Oshan that it would go straight up like a stick. V'lo tzulam, they didn't want to teach. Shochel Levium named by Alexandria. So what they brought craftsmen from Alexandria became my sectores. They knew to do my sectores. Malei Oshan, but that should go up precisely in a stick and then spread out. When they reached the ceiling, they were not that expert. That's the reason when it says it went up like a straight up like a palm tree. It spread out and came down. And those this one of the Alexandrians immediately dissipate. Became aware of this. And then Kodesh Baruch created for his honor. They sent for the Beis. This was the Beis Haftinas. 74 by the bakers is the Beis Haftinas. That's Beis Garmu. Sorry. So this is the base of Tinas. So they send the base of Tinas to come back, and they didn't want to come back. Um, um, Chule, etc. In other words, everything we said before, that they doubled the salary, 12, 24, 24, 48, and they asked him why they want to teach, and leave now with Yerushalmi. They wanted to do it because they want other people to know this, and they'll do it for Avodah Zarah. And b'dvarim elo maskin shvach, again, there's a praiseworthy basket of them. Shlo yitzah isha she'ach mem musemes me'olam. That none of the women who married into the family, none of the way the family ever went out with perfume that people shouldn't say was from the Ketores. Lo like that, el she'ach mem no say isha makom acher. So married a woman from another family. Haya paskim would stipulate that shlotis basim, that you should never wear perfume for this reason. Rabbi Yossi said, "Matzasi tinok echad mibeis of Tinas." I found a child from the house of Tinas. I said, "Bini, Beis Mishpachas, of what family are you?" Mishpachas plenty from that family of Tinas. I said, "Bini, my son, I will settle your forefathers. Bishul niskablu rabbos kvodim, since they had in mind to enhance their covenant, or my covenant shamayim, and diminish the honor of heaven. Therefore, their honor was diminished. For shamayim this rabba, and the covenant of shamayim was enhanced." In other words, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of the Averos of the people who were not being Oved Hashem properly and doing these things Hashem Shamayim as they should have. Amar Akiva said, Sachli Shimon ben Lagas. Shimon ben Lagas told me, Pulakada Yisi Asadim. I was gathering grasses. Aniva Tino Gerachim B'Shvei, I and a young lad from the house of Tinas. He saw Shabacha, I saw him crying. I saw him laughing. Maritlo, I said to B'ni, Lama B'chisu, why did you cry? Armally, he said, I'll cover Beis Abba, in the honor of my father's house. Sheismai, which is diminished. Is destroyed. Why did you laugh? Armally, I'll cover them soon, it's taking Lasi Levo. The honor which is Tzadikim Rav Gentry going to have in the world to come, of course, very reminiscent of Rabbi Akiva, again, Sechos Makos. He saw the shul coming to basic Kodesh HaKodeshim, and he laughed. So here too, I realized that eventually Kodesh Baruch is going to create a Emunah. Kodesh Baruch is going to bring us back to this, to the glory of when the Beis Mikdash will exist. And he said, the child said, Hare Mala, what reminded me of this is Hare Mala Oshon Negdi. I see Mala Osh in the grass and Mala Osh in front of me. Numesi Lo, I said to him, Mini, my son, Tareli, show me. And when he said, I can't. I'm supposed to be able to say to me, I'm sorry for my forefathers, Shol Aros Biri, not to show to human beings. Rabbi Yochanan said, Pogabi, Zakin Echad, that once met me, an elder in the base of Tinas, Lishal Beis Tinas, and House of Tinas. He said, Rebbe, Lishavar, are you Beis Abba Tznuim? Once upon a time, the house of my forefathers were modest. The rest of Megillah, they gave this Megillah to each other and kept it quiet and safe. Achshav Eshen Ne'amani, now they're no longer trustworthy. Hail Chazal Megillah, you take the Megillah with the Ma'aseh Ketores. Tizorah, and be careful with it. Shabbat Tzeisis Advarim. Livnei Akiva, when I came over and told the story about Akiva, Zogel the Mav, his eyes cried, he cried tears. I said, after Enot Tzichim Laskin L'Ganai. Now we no longer have to mention them negatively because we see that they were indeed L'Shem Shamayim, and they were willing to give up the Megillah when it was appropriate to do so. The Gemara says that all of them had an excuse. We don't necessarily accept the excuse, but they had an excuse. Not that Avodah Zarah shouldn't learn. They should learn to do these special avodas for Avodah Zarah. Chutz mi ben Kamsar. Except ben Kamsar. Well, why can he teach to write all the four OCs together? What's the big deal? So you wrote any four letters together. It's a cute trick, but it's not going to glorify any Avodah Zarah. Okay, the Gemara says, Kaidin Tamon. It's like we learned over there. Elin Mushe B'Mikdash. These were the people who were in charge of Beis Hamikdash and Shkolim. There were a whole bunch of people who are enumerated who were in charge of this thing, that thing, the other thing. And so the question is why we enumerate those people. So Rabbi Chaim was also we brought down Shkolim from Shkolim. Chizka Amar Rabbi Chizka said Amar Simon Rabbanan. Rabbi Chizka said this is a dispute between Rabbi Simon and Rabbanan. Why we count specifically those names enumerated there. Chadam, I want to say Ksherik Kol Dor V'Dor Bolim Nos. That so the it comes to it mentions the Ksherim in each and every generation. So the Moshe says, if you think that that's even going on base of Tinas and base Garmu, etc. Says Kaidim B'Tamon B'Perikei B'Shkolim Elam Munin Shul Mikdash Chashav Asim Beis Garmu Beis Tinas. They mention among the Memunim, and he says V'Kulan Chadamai Ksher Kol Dov Dov B'Elim Nos V'Kulan Mikrayim Moshe Marishayin, and they're all called in the name of the first ones. Ha'imana Kulan Nema Zech L'Tzad Givracha, and all that says Zech L'Tzad Givracha Beis Garmu Beis Tinas. Lokei, if not, Lo Nikram Ksherim Shebedor Hashmo. In other words, the Ksherim were all called by in all generations were called the way he's saying Moshe's learning. So I don't think this way we learned back there in we didn't learn this back there in Shkolim. That he's saying that the Ksherim in every generation were mentioned in that Mishnah, and meaning that the best were mentioned, the most kosher, and as mentions also have Tinas and Garmu, so they must have also been kosher, not like our Mishnah here. Lashon Mishnah Shkolim is, it says there, this without Beis Garmu, Meister Panim, Beis Tinas, Meister Ktoris, among the other ones, like Elazar Paroches, Ben Arzat Tzaltzal, etc. Oh! So if you go, these people mentioned in the Mishnah, all the Kshem Shekhabol Dor Dor, I know what the Pnei Moshe says, Al Shem Rishonim, I think it means Al Shem HaKshemim. But, so in any event, so even Zechar Zayik Bracha would be going also on the of Tinas and Garmu, and Ugas Ben Levi, who are mentioned all there in the Mishnah. And only one whose stock will be excluded would be Ben Kamsar, who isn't mentioned there. Okay, so, but there's another opinion that Chon Amar, he said, Misha Ba'osa Dor, Mona Mashabdoro. Whereas in the generation of the Mishnah, he mentioned the people in his generation. So he says here, Klomar Velozkru El Bnei Moshe says, Klomar Velozkru El Elu Sheni Kron Kach B'Dorim. Because Kulam so the Avshal Beis Garmu Beis Avtinas Nemashem Hashem Yerkav. In other words, they're not sharing necessarily that Mishnah. It's the people who are in charge of that generation, which the Tana enumerated the people. So therefore, Kelkum Alpha Beis Garmu Beis Amas Nemashem Hashem Yerkav. In our Mishnah, right? Abba Shemot Tzulu Yivreim Lo Kibul Chometz Tshubasam. They didn't accept the response. Shkom Kem Lo Lamed. They didn't accept Torah. Besides that, they didn't teach them, they didn't, Lo Chazu, they didn't come back until they doubled their wages. So maybe we did say that day, I don't remember. I'll have to look it up, but probably did say it because it's about parallel, so yeah. Alright, anyway, so the, I don't think Carmenea says different there. Yeah, it says the same thing. So they must have worked the same way back then. Okay, so let's see back in the Gemara over here. Including Beis Avtinas and the first three except for Ben Kamsa, right? Hugras and Beis Garmu, Beis Avtinas, and Hugras. That Mishnah Shlomo just mentioned whoever's in that generation. So then, in Mona Mashabdor, he mentioned those people in his generation. All these people mentioned on Mishnah, they say Shem Shem Yirkav, not just on Ban Ben Kamtsar, all of them, right? So the Amina Marzechet Tzayik Bracha, and who's the say Zechet Tzayik Bracha, and Ben Kotin, the Dayan V'Lekir, V'Chaverov. Well, Kulan Haya Ben Zoma, and all these people Ben Zoma said, Misha Chay Nulacha. You should know that whatever you get from Shamayim. And as Korma says, Klomar, Lo Mishlemu El Mizmzon Tzuri L'Chom Min Shamayim. Everything you get from Shamayim. And with your own name they call you. With your own praise, they praise you. Okay? So, Ve'en Adam, they don't praise you. They praise you. There's no forgetfulness for Kosh Baruch Hu that he will pay back people if they're insincere. Nobody's going to touch something which is prepared for you. It's not prepared for them. Now it sounds like this is going Mandamar that they were okay based on Tinas Beis Garmu, because it sounds like we're saying, it was from Shamayim that their wages were doubled, and from Shamayim that they were called back. And Chachamim thought, we'll save the money and we'll get other people to do it. So no, you can't do it. They're destined to be the ones to do it. They're destined to be the ones to do it. And they're destined to get more money. They're destined to get more money. Although it could be, it's not necessarily, but it sounds like it's a praise that they were destined, but maybe they were destined, but it wasn't necessarily a good thing the way they did it. It's not clear. I guess it's not 100% clear. It sounds like it's that it was Bashert, and then this was appropriate, and that was supposed to happen, but I guess you don't necessarily have to say you can get out of it. Okay, but that's the whole point, is that, you think you can depose them, can't depose them, it's their place. You think you can pay them less, can't pay them less, you might even have to pay more, if they're supposed to get that from Shamayim. Okay, nobody can touch that, which is prepared for you. Okay, Hajulach Perak Memuneh. Next parak. Torah B'Kalfi. Torah B'Kalfi, so the Kohen Gadol would grab the lots from inside the lottery box. He took out the two lots. Echad Kasav Hashem. One is written out to Hashem. Echad Kasav Lazazel. Skam B'Yamino, as we mentioned before, the Skam is his right, Rosh Beis on his small, Rosh Beis on his left. Im Shel Shem Ola B'Yamino, if the one of the lottery, the lot of Shem came out on his right hand, Haskano Melo, the Haskano was right to say, Ishi Kohen Gadol, my master Kohen Gadol, Hagbeis Yimidcho, lift up your right hand. The smaller law, if the Hashem came out on the left hand, Rosh Beis Of, who was on the left, Omer Lo would say, Ishi Kohen Gadol, Hagbeis Mocha, lift up your left hand. Nostam Hashem Asir may put on the two goats, right, say, Lashem Chatos. Right? Right. Shomer Lo Yatzich Lomar Chatos. You never say Chatos. It's superfluous. Elo Hashem. He just said Hashem. And since he said the Shem Hashem first, it would answer Baruch Shem K'val Mechutz L'Olam Bay. And that brings us to the end for today.